All right, this is page 2 of chapter 11, section 1, sampling techniques. So most people need to take a sample of their subjects, sample of so take bottles out of the line, take customers that come in the door, take students out of classes. How do you pick a good sample? Okay, how do you get a representative sample of your population? There are various methods of random sampling techniques to pick subjects and gather data. One is called random sampling. Every individual must have an equal chance of being selected, and every sample size we draw has to have an equal chance of being selected. So if we're talking students, we can assign a number to each member of the population or use an existing ID number. Select random numbers used by a random number generator. Your calculator or computer can just spit out a random number or just, cite a random number and or use an ID number somehow, like pick every ID starting with a 4, or just put their names and numbers in a slip and put it in a pile and, shake thoroughly in between each pick. Individuals in a population that correspond with these numbers or papers are the subjects of your sample. So you've done that before. You put their names on something, put them in a bowl, grab the number out, the name out, and that person's part of the sample. That's how you randomly pick one. All right, if you want a little more organized, if you have a bigger group of population or people or items, you can try a stratified sample. In a stratified sample, you divide the population into groups first, or strata, and then you select random sample from each group. Okay, so separate people or items first, and then randomly sum from each group. It doesn't have to be the same number from each group, just sum from each group. Okay, versus a cluster sample, which also divides into groups first, or clusters, and then selects all of one group or all of 2 groups out of 10, but not all of the clusters. So after they're grouped, either some out of each one for stratified, or a whole group or 2 or 3 out of the 10 different groups. Okay. Systematic is choosing, starting with a value at random. So every kth member of the population. So if you own a store and you want to ask a question of every 5th person that walks in the door, so you're counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, ask that person. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, ask that person. That would be a systematic sample. Okay. Here's kind of a pictorial representation of that. This right here is your systematic. Okay. Because you're asking every 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's systematic. This one groups the population of study into 3 separate income groups and then chooses sum from each group. So that would be stratified. Stratified. Systematic. Okay, so this must be cluster. Well, they are separated into zones, and then you're taking all of this zone. And to be clear, you could take all of this zone too, as long as you're taking all of a group, okay, versus some from each group. So this is the cluster sampling method, okay? So let's practice this down at the bottom here. Identify the types of sampling: random, systematic, stratified, or clustered. Measure the length of time every 9th person coming into the bank waits for a teller for service over a period of 2 days. Every 9th, that is systematic, right? Pregnancy study in Baltimore randomly selected 15 communities from the metropolitan area and then interviewed all pregnant women in these communities. So if they did all, they grouped first and then talked to all. Okay, there were more than 15. So they picked 15 and talked to everyone out of them. So they are clearly a cluster sampling method. Okay. Selected 15 implies there were others to choose from as well. Okay. So selecting 15 versus selecting one, there was many communities to choose from. They picked 15 and asked all in each. Okay. Choose a committee by dividing employees according to rank and then randomly sampling each from the group. So they were dividing employees. So they were grouped. And then a random sample from each group. So this is clearly stratified. Divide the population into groups based on geography. So we're grouping first. And then within each region, we are selecting respondents. So each is stratified, some from each region. Okay?